Merci Arachno. Merci Majin pour les follow. Alors Loulou dans la bêta qui te sauve au début du jeu. On sait qui c'est maintenant. Ils ont pensé à MF ou Diablo. Je sais pas qui. Si, on a vu les vidéos. Ah, messieurs dames, ça démarre. On commence avec le trailer. Putain, j'entends pas fort. Hein. Vous entendez bien? Ok. Donc ça, c'est la fameuse vidéo qu'ils avaient mise. Je pense qu'il y avait une erreur dans la vidéo.
We're going to have an entire world of Sanctuary for our players to offer. There's going to never be an absence of something to do.
After the player has finished the campaign,
pas assez fort. Vous voulez que je mette un peu plus fort?
They gain access to a special, what we call capstone dungeon that they have to complete. Once they're able to finish this capstone dungeon, they're going to gain access to the first world tier.
As you complete the world tier, it will open up the opportunity for you to go into your next world tier. That involves unlocking powerful loot, new items, and more advantages for your player to have a better opportunity at end game.
Whether you're a fan of dungeons, PvP, or just roaming around the world, there's a way to continue your Diablo adventure long after hitting max level. As your character continues to grow in power, you'll start with the skill tree and expand out into the Paragon system.
Donc là, c'est une vidéo que j'ai déjà commentée sur les différentes parties du endgame. Donc là, il parle du Paragon qui permet une customisation assez élevée. Pour faire des rotations sur les tableaux. En fait, tout ce qu'il faut retenir, c'est qu'une fois que vous avez commencé un tableau, vous devez prendre une autre porte pour aller sur un autre tableau, mais avant de choisir le tableau, vous pouvez le choisir complètement parmi les 9. Alors là, elle vient de dire que quand on finit un donjon, il aura une chance de dropper un aspect, ce qui n'était pas le cas dans la bêta. Et c'est là où on a vu où il y avait une erreur. Soit ils ont changé le mode pour récupérer les aspects, c'est une chance d'en looter, soit elle s'est trompée.
Dungeons in particular are really close to my heart. Nightmare dungeons are going to give the players the opportunity to experience a dungeon that they might have already experienced in their past playthroughs. They'll enter the dungeon with a found sigil that alters the playstyle and the intensity of the
j'ai pas de sous-titres. De toute façon, dès qu'il y aura quelque chose d'important, là c'est une vidéo qui est déjà en ligne, elle est déjà en français, cette vidéo. Donc vous pourrez la regarder sur YouTube, elle est déjà présente en français. Ça s'appelle le début, la fin du jeu, pardon. Donc là, il nous met ça pour patienter, hein. C'est vraiment pour replanter le décor.
and then using it to activate the nightmare version of that dungeon space.
La bêta PVP, ouais, on osef un peu, je pense.
Add a little bit of a twist of flavor on your particular dungeon.
There's some targeted activities in Diablo 4 that suit what you're feeling in the mood for.
The Forces of Hell are starting to have more influence in certain parts of Sanctuary in the vast interconnected overworld of the experience. And as the players are going into Helltide areas,
les fameux Helltide, les vagues de l'enfer, les vagues d'infernales. Donc ça va être des zones, il faudra tuer des monstres particuliers, ramasser des cendres, et avec ces cendres-là, il faudra ouvrir des coffres. Sachant qu'on pourra voir en avance ce que le coffre va dropper. Donc il y aura plusieurs coffres sur la map, tu pourras choisir quel coffre tu ouvres. L'arbre des murmures, c'est des bounties qu'on va devoir faire dans la carte. Et une fois qu'on en a fait une dizaine, on retourne voir l'arbre et il nous donne des doutes. On peut choisir.
So you're going to go serve these bounties, gather different rewards, different items, and bring them back to the tree in hopes that it can exchange.
Quand on revient à l'arbre, on a un choix de collection d'objets. Là, il y a 16 000 personnes sur le Diablo, la chaîne Diablo.
It's very cool the way it's been put together, and I can't wait for people to see it, to be honest.
Les champs de la haine, le
Diablo 4, we
PVP.
have a focus on the world of Sanctuary. And there are parts of that world that we call the Fields of Hatred, where Lilith's presence in Sanctuary has begun to seep through and manifest these poisonous areas throughout the world. When players go to these regions, they get to engage in player versus player conflict.
These offer opportunities for the player to collect shards. But there is a little bit of a
C'est à quelle heure? C'est là, ils sont en train de commencer là. Ils balancent, normalement c'est 20h pile que ça démarre, mais bon, ils ont lancé la vidéo et donc juste après la vidéo ça va partir. Merci John pour le follow.
Once they've got the purified shards, they can take these, go back to nearby towns to sell them, and then use that to
Donc là ils expliquent le principe de PVP. Tu tues les mecs, tu ramasses des shards, tu les valides auprès d'un hôtel, et une fois que tu as validé ça, tu peux les échanger. C'est un peu comme des obols, échanger en pariant pour avoir des skins. Merci John Cove pour le Prime et le follow. Merci beaucoup, ça fait plaisir. Merci Carnessi, merci Kifour pour le follow.
We're really eager to hear all of your experiences and just enjoy the entire story with you all.
Ah, ça c'est un des World Boss, ça. Ils ont quasiment rien montré sur ce World Boss là, ça restera une petite surprise sympathique. 6-6-2023, ça ne bougera pas.
Hey folks, this is Riker, and welcome to the next Diablo 4 developer live stream update. I'll be your co-host. I'm a YouTube content creator and professional Diablo fan.
Oui, il y aura un clan.
Thank the Diablo team for having me here today. We're going to be diving into some juicy topics, and we have with us some folks who'll take us through those. We have with us...
Hi, I'm Joe Shelley. I'm the game director for Diablo 4, and for folks watching us here and
ils vont se présenter, ils vont faire un petit tour de table pour se présenter.
They start spinning end over end, you know,
on a un game director, Joe Shelley.
Fair. Okay, I'm Joseph Pipora. I'm the associate game director for Diablo 4.
Il est co-game director.
Adam Fletcher, I'm the associate director of community
et Adam Fletcher,
for the Diablo franchise.
Community lead
so we have a lot
Diablo.
to talk about today. We have Riker here.
Thank you again, Riker, for
joining us to be our host.
Et Riker, gros streamer, YouTuber anglais.
And we did want to actually do a few quick agenda items and so forth beforehand.
Okay, on parlait
just a
du
reminder
planning.
to everyone that Diablo 4 obviously is coming out in June, and you can still pre-order.
Yeah.
We do have deluxe
le fameux
and
QR
ultimate
code pour
versions
acheter.
available for pre-order.
Ils sont bons.
Just the base game itself, but the deluxe and ultimate versions actually give you early access. So there should be a QR code on screen if you want to pre-order for deluxe or ultimate versions of the game. Today, though, we have a ton to talk about. We expect the stream to be about 90 minutes or so because we want to cover a lot of different topics, one being endgame, the other one being some class balance changes in regards to some of the beta feedback that we ended up receiving, as well as the dungeon feedback that we also received during our beta learnings that we actually posted last week. So without further ado, I'm going to stay quiet for most of the stream. You'll see me more towards the end.
Lui, c'est lui qui va balancer la dinguerie.
I will pass it off
Là, il a balancé le planning.
Twitter the whole time. He's very busy.
Yes, I'm looking at chat. Yes, I'll be looking at chat because we will be doing Q&A afterwards. But I will pass it off to Riker because obviously...
Ok, donc il est resté clair. Il sait qu'il a une dinguerie à sortir, mais il la garde pour lui. Il va la sortir plus tard.
We've been able to play the latest builds of Diablo 4, and we'd love to get your take and kind of hear, like, how was it?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. So I've been waiting for Diablo 4 for...
Ok, lui demande son expérience à Riker.
I've been waiting so long.
Il va dire qu'il a kiffé, comme d'hab.
I mean, look at me. So, yeah, when you reached out for the chance to come to the offices, play the latest build, then getting to come here, getting to experience it.
C'est un privilégié, il a été invité là-bas, il a fait son petit tour dans les bureaux, etc.
Insight into the build, into the systems, and get to play with decked out characters, endgame builds, seeing all the synergies coming together with the items, the Paragon boards and everything.
Voilà, il dit un petit peu tout ce qu'il a aimé.
Awesome. Good to hear. I know one of the first topics that we wanted to jump into was
90 minutes normalement.
Talking a little bit more about the world tiers and the capstone dungeons, I believe.
Yeah, because that's basically the gateway into all the other topics, right? Because we
là, il parle de choses qu'on a nous on n'a pas fait dans la bêta, les capstone donjons. Lui, il a testé déjà.
Unlock those and then get access to all that endgame
stuff. Capstone donjon, pour rappel, ça va être les donjons qui vont nous permettre de monter la difficulté.
Yeah, let's talk about that. So yeah, I guess the first thing we want to talk about here is
Donc,
voilà,
c'est quand on passe d'une difficulté à la difficulté suivante, il va y avoir un donjon particulier à devoir faire.
Before they gain access to that, they actually are going to have to go through what we call one of our end cap dungeons. These are longer and more challenging dungeon spaces that have big like boss encounters.
Ok, c'est pas un donjon simple comme on a l'habitude de faire, c'est un donjon beaucoup plus long. Ça va être un donjon beaucoup plus balèze que les petits donjons qu'on a l'habitude de faire.
Riker, when you were playing, you had a chance to actually check out your first end cap dungeon, at least as part of this test. Like, what was your experience playing through this?
Yeah, so the first end cap dungeon, all right. I was one of those guys who was saying veteran difficulty is too easy, crank it up. So end cap dungeon, I think the first one, it's recommended level 50. I was level 45, thought I was a hot
premier
shot.
capstone donjon, il recommande level 50.
It was a humbling experience. That's how I discovered that.
Ça sera pour passer du niveau 2 au 3.
So hardcore players beware.
On voit les niveaux des mobs, ils sont level 50 là, sur le jeu, sur
les. Adjust my build and eventually put my tail between my legs, go power up a bit more before trying it again, but then conquering it felt like a really great achievement, very satisfying.
Yeah, these aren't really spaces we expect players to want to go and like try to farm and try to get a lot of things out of. These are milestones, gates for players to pass or gain access to that nightmare tier. Once the players actually get into this next world tier, World Tier 3, they're going to get access to a few new features. We're going to talk about a number of them today. So you'll start to see that areas of the world are going to be affected by the Helltide system. You're going to get access to nightmare dungeons. You're going to start to see unique items begin to drop in different parts of the game.
Okay.
And then you're going to start to see sacred and ancestral items also begin to appear in World Tier 3. And then
ils vont nous montrer du lourd.
4. And also, in addition to those things,
ils vont nous montrer
the world, of course, is becoming more dangerous as the players step into nightmare.
Les objets ancestraux et sacrés, et les uniques qui vont nous montrer.
Monsters are going to do more damage. They are going to be more aggressive. There's a number of changes. Joe, do you have any thoughts on like some of the changes?
Donc on va voir vraiment ce que ça donne un objet ancestral.
Yeah. You know, one of the things I love about the capstone dungeons functioning as unlocks for the world tiers is that you've got this the general gameplay loop of getting more powerful, optimizing your build, getting more gear, and then you have something that you're testing yourself against. And then when you defeat that, you move into this entirely new world tier with all of the
Ok. En gros, ce qui est bien avec le capstone donjon, c'est que ça va t'ouvrir de nouvelles portes, et pour le faire, tu as déjà besoin d'un minimum de build. Et une fois que tu réussis, tu passes dans un nouveau monde où tout est plus fort.
That's right, yeah. The monsters have certain cooldowns between their attacks. They have logic for how they do targeting. They have projectiles. Some projectiles have seeking, so they can home to some extent.
Ok, il va y avoir des projectiles. En fait, les monstres vont être boostés. Il va y avoir des projectiles qui te suivent carrément. C'est pas les trucs qui vont tout droit.
And so a lot of those different parameters we adjust as you go up in world tiers to make the monsters more threatening. Because of course the players are getting more familiar with the game. They're getting more skilled, and they're also getting access to more tools in terms of new abilities through legendary powers or even unique items.
Yeah. One of the things we wanted to make sure we didn't do too much is it's easy for us to imagine that we could just make the game more difficult by increasing the damage the creatures deal or increasing the amount of hit points they have as you're going through these encounters. But
il dit que le jeu va pas être seulement augmenté parce que les monstres tapent plus fort. Merci Mesrine.
Work when working with monsters and those various encounters to kind of like create that extra level of challenge.
En fait, ils disent que le jeu va être déjà plus challengeant par les mécaniques.
Oh, I definitely felt it.
Donc, changer de world tier, c'est pas simplement augmenter la vie des monstres, c'est vraiment passer dans un monde vraiment différent et beaucoup plus challengeant. C'est pour ça que ça se fait pas forcément level 35, et faut avoir déjà un minimum et envoyer la sauce.
Nice.
There's one more thing I want to talk about with regards to world tiers as well. And I'm very excited about this talk in general. I've been waiting to have a lot of these conversations and with the audience, they can kind of convey some of the more interesting depth and complexities associated with some of the systems. So in world tiers, you gain access to two new sets of itemization tiers. In world tier 3, you gain access to sacred items, many who appear for you. And in world tier 4, you gain access to ancestral items that could be dropped for players as they're going through those spaces.
Le 3 c'est ancestraux et 4, non, 3 c'est sacré, 4 c'est ancestraux.
That you're killing are going to be the power is going to be based on their strength and level. So if you are, you're playing in the beta and you're killing level, 35 monsters for whatever reason, and you're going to be getting slightly more powerful gear as a result of that because the monsters are more challenging and they're going to be dropping better gear for you. But once you have reached level 50, and that basically that flow means that as you're leveling up and you're fighting more challenging things, you're going to continue to like slowly upgrade all of your gear over time. You'll find a ring here, and a helmet there, a pair of gloves. That's great. That's how we want you to kind of like get exposed to itemization systems as you're progressing through initially in the game. But once you get into World Tier 3, things change a little bit. So items that drop you have a chance to be sacred. Not every item in World Tier 3 is sacred by default.
Okay.
The higher the level of creature
you're fighting,
more
Tier
likely
3,
the chances
t'as une
that
chance
item
de
dropping
dropper
that
du
creature
sacré.
will be
Tous les
sacred
items
in
ne
nature,
seront pas sacrés.
also based on the kind of content you're completing. But sacred items, when they drop, they drop at a very large range in terms of the power that they can, they can
en fait, ce
have.
qui fait,
So
c'est
you
qu'il y a
could get into World Tier 3, you could kill a pack of elites in your first dungeon in World Tier 3 at level 50. And you can get an item out of that group. Maybe it's a rare item that drops up from that group that is powerful enough that could serve a level 70 character. The sacred item tier basically is going to have gear in it that goes from level 50 all the way up to level 70 in terms of like the power swing there. Once you get a little bit higher, it's a little more likely to get slightly higher in the range, but it's very likely to get those really, really great drops really early, which we think is super exciting because we want you to be trying to like always be looking for like just the right ring, and it could show up like your best in slot ring for that for
Donc il dit que les items sacrés, en fait, ils vont venir s'ajouter à la liste des items qui sont déjà présents. Donc ça sera pas, tu vas pas limiter que du sacré, tu vas avoir des chances d'en looter. Et donc du coup, le up des items sacrés va être énorme.
So the level requirement for this is actually to be set at the level at which you actually loot the item. So once again, we have trading in the game. If you are level 50 and you get a really, really great ring drop, that's going to be good for not quite your build, but like maybe you're playing a bleed barbarian. This is really, really good for like a berserk build or like a big fury build. And you say, okay, I want to give this to you can hold on to it. That could be a really valuable item to trade because it could be that it's eye power such that it's like really good for level 70 character.
Ok. Donc il est possible d'avoir des sacrés rares.
Because you got it at level 50. That's going to raise with the course of time.
Et donc échangeable.
Super fun for players to chase. And there's more of that as you get into the ancestral tier, but that's not all. I think the next thing we're talking about is actually legendary and unique items.
Ils vont nous montrer des items. Alors.
So, all right. We've talked a little bit about legendary items in the past. I really want to focus on things that we haven't spent a ton of time discussing, but to give a general overview, legendary items in general are attached to like legendary
37, 41.
And these legendary powers, or reverse, legendary powers attached to legendary items. Legendary powers basically are designed to appear on multiple different slots. So, an aspect might appear on an amulet, but it might also appear on gloves, or it might appear on ring, or it might also appear on weapons. These things have a tendency to be in a lot of different places based on the power itself. And we like this because it let players like extract aspects and powers from items and put them into other items that meet these certain criteria. It's fun because we want players to go and be chasing certain fantasies. It helps them kind of like hone in on certain kinds of builds and gets them excited about the potential of like kind of taking all these different Legos and kind of putting them together. Can I say Legos on stream?
Yes. Legendaries, yeah.
Legendaries is what I'm talking about. So once you get all of these legendaries together,
and you put them together, that's really, really fun.
So that's part of the fantasy of legendary items. Did you actually get going to 1 to 50? There's only a certain number of these are actually available. But when you get into World Tiers 3 and 4, more legendary powers are available. Did you get a chance to see any like new legendary powers as you were playing?
Oh yeah, I mean, I definitely got to see a variety of legendary powers. I got a certain number of drops. Drop rates didn't feel out of control, but you guys gave me some pre-made characters as well that were decked out with builds, and I saw lots of cool synergistic powers that came together to really make a build flow well. And I think my favorite power was probably on actually a unique item, and it was for the druid that made your werewolf form your true form. Mm-hmm. So I know a lot of people have been saying,
pour légendaire qu'on n'a pas forcément vu, c'est ça?
All the time.
Yep.
Yes, you can.
Yeah, that's the next step, right? So unique items. So unique items only begin to appear when players enter the nightmare tier. So once you're in World Tier 3, there's a low chance that some of the game's
les objets uniques
as they're progressing through that.
World Tier 3
and they're very, very rare. These
are
huge chase item opportunities here.
Level 100.
Some of them are really important for build making. Some
1000 de vie.
Build paths and opportunities for players.
On aura la vidéo, on reviendra après sur la vidéo pour regarder les items.
Like what you suggest there when you had that experience trying to gather the werewolf.
Ça va vite là, on n'a pas le temps de tout voir.
Effectively forever with that druid unique. Really cool stuff.
And there's more of these unlocked
over the course of your level progression as well.
No, I think I saw Shaco earlier there in the list of unique items.
That's correct. Shaco does make a return, and there's lots of opportunities for us to basically kind of pay homage to the items that came in previous versions of Diablo, previous entries in the series.
You'll see
a number of different items make returns. Items like Grandfather, Shaco, obviously. You'll see a few.
On a des items level 100, c'est 1000 de vie, mon pote.
Over the course of the game's live development.
Also, this is a good way for people to kind of see the new new font changes and so forth that based off the beta learnings that we actually ended up posting last week.
Yeah, we'll get more into the beta learnings later in the live stream, where we'll go over them in a lot more depth. But yeah, absolutely, the font was a great example. I mean, I think we added at least 20%
j'ai pas vu le... Ça allait un peu vite. Après le stream, on regardera la vidéo, on s'arrêtera sur les items.
Highly readable, and we spent a lot of time thinking about, how the game is going to display on all kinds of different screens, different aspect ratios, TVs, right? And so we want the font to be highly readable in all of those situations. But it didn't feel as much like Diablo as it could have, and so we went back and looked for a font that was still highly readable but had more
il parle de la...
it's just a great example of
la fonte.
Players pointing something out and us being able to react to it.
What's the next thing we want to talk about, Riker? What do you think?
Well, so we have all these legendary items. One semi-deterministic way to farm for them, Helltide. It's an activity where,
donc, on parlait des bagues infernales plus précisément, là. Ils ont fait juste un aperçu sur les items.
To hunt for specific unique items, and it's going to be one of the main endgame activities that we'll be partaking in, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So as I mentioned before, once the player gains access to Nightmare Torment Tier, they are going to Nightmare Tier. They're going to start gaining. They're going to start seeing some new activities. One of them is Helltide. Helltide is basically going to be the situation where you're running in through the world of Sanctuary.
Ils appellent ça le Nightmare Tier.
Sky turns red, blood begins to fall from the sky, new monsters begin to
quand vous rentrez dans une zone et que le jeu commence à devenir rouge, c'est que vous êtes dans la zone. Et là, il y a des démons qui vont pop.
You're going to be getting what we call cinders. It's this new currency player building.
Donc là, ce qui ramasse là, les petites flammes, c'est ça, les cendres.
And this is great because you get to take these
on en voit une là, ça c'est une cendre. Et là, quand il va sur un coffre, il va avoir un légendaire normalement, obligatoire quasiment. Le chat de l'écran.
So every one of the caches in the Helltide zone is actually tied to an item slot. And they all have different costs. So you're kind of like you'll be gathering cinders by playing within this space, trying to locate one of the caches that have the item type that you're looking for. Whether like maybe you're looking for an amulet or looking for a ring. Maybe you're looking for a Shaco. So you're looking actually to go find a helmet cache. And you want to keep trying to go after the helmet cache and the rare, desperate hope that you're going to get exactly the unique item that you're looking for, right? That's cool. We want to give you some of that opportunity to target farm a little bit. But there's actually a little bit of fun there too. So one of the things that's like one of my personal favorite parts of the Helltide system is the idea that the players there's like an extra set of stakes, right? When the player's running around with these cinders, they have the chance if they die, they're going to lose about half of their cinders every time they fall. And they don't
si tu meurs dans la zone, tu perds tes cendres.
So you have to be very careful about like when you're looking to overextend as part of the combat experience in order to like farm more cinders.
Ok, faut pas faire les fous dans la zone parce que si tu meurs, tu perds tes cendres. Et je pense que quelqu'un peut les ramasser à ta place.
The greedier you get, the more likely it is that you're going to lose things.
That's right, and there's a time limit on Helltide too, right?
That's right. Helltide is only active, like the Force of Hell only like arrive for about an hour during when they are actually active. And different areas of
ok, il y a un temps. La zone ne reste pas tout le temps. Il y a un temps pour à peu près 1 heure apparemment.
If you leave a Helltide zone, those cinders are gone. You have to spend them.
Ok. Donc quand tu ramasses tes cendres, avant de te casser de la zone, il faut que tu cliques sur les coffres. Sinon tu vas les perdre. Ça c'est important. Si tu meurs, tu les perds. Si tu quittes la zone, tu les perds. Donc à partir du moment où tu as commencé à farm, ramasse tes cendres et va cliquer sur les coffres pour vider tes cendres et récupérer les items.
To see, okay, which is the one that has the slot that I'm looking for, what are the different costs, and then I'm doing some quick math. Okay, I'm gathering cinders at about this rate per minute, I have this many minutes left. Okay, I think I could afford the most expensive, the weapon slot, and I got to backtrack to that place in order to get there. And then I died. And I'm like, okay, recalculating.
Yeah.
Okay, how much time do I have left now? Okay, so quickly. Yeah. And then I died again, and like, better luck next time. Another hour before the next one comes around, I'll have a better plan this time.
Now, granted, you can still get legendary items dropped for you. You can still get really good drops inside Helltide experiences while you're killing monsters. So it's not like if you lose those cinders, you've lost all opportunities for rewards. Yeah. But obviously, it does take a little wind out of your sails if you just happen to get jumped at the wrong time. Again, another great opportunity for there to be players nearby when they're trying to help out in those situations.
Yeah, you know, one of the things I think is really cool
Donc en gros, jouer en groupe dans les Helltide, c'est important.
Boxes with loot
pour éviter de mourir.
Awesome loot inside, right? They, you know, each time a Helltide appears, they're in different locations,
That's
right? So you have to go and find them, you know, as Riker was saying. But for the duration of that Helltide, they're in fixed places. So, you know, when you go into the Helltide area, it's useful to scout out and see where the caches are for the item slots that you're interested in.
En fait, ce qu'il dit, c'est que quand la vague infernale va commencer, elle va rester un certain temps en place. La première des choses, c'est de commencer à regarder où sont les coffres qui t'intéressent pour pouvoir faire des allers-retours tranquillement. Parce que apparemment, ça va être chaud et tu peux mourir assez facilement.
Now we did capture that with the UI off, so you can't see the icon above it, but there is an icon that says, in here, there are boots.
That's correct.
So you will know before you open that cache.
Ok.
And
Donc, il dit comme astuce, si un coffre qui t'intéresse, c'est de mettre un marqueur sur la map, comme ça tu te rappelles où est le coffre. Parce que comme la zone est grande, il y a moyen qu'avec il y ait plein de coffres, bah, tu te rappelles pas quelle zone t'avais repéré, quel coffre t'avais repéré. Et donc du coup, c'est bien de mettre un marqueur pour pouvoir y retourner et avoir ton loot.
In the overworld of Sanctuary. So lots of really fun things happen inside these Helltide areas over the course of the player's experience.
And it's also an opportunity to farm a special crafting material, right?
That's correct. There are craft materials like Fiend Rose and things that really are coming directly from Helltide encounters.
Alors, il y a un matériel de craft spécifique qui drop uniquement dans cette activité-là. Donc, ce sera très important de le faire pour tout le monde.
Crafting materials in order to target
c'est les crafts de matériaux de légendaires.
We're going to be doing Nightmare Dungeons. You want to talk a bit about that?
Yeah.
Et on parlait des donjons, du cauchemar.
Nightmare Dungeons are we're going to talk again. We're going to talk about.
Donc là, les fameux sigils, les fameux emblèmes. Lightning Damage, Nightmare Portal. Monster Shadow Damage, War Tier 3 minimum, War Tier 4. Il y a un nombre de revive qui est permis, tu as le droit de mourir 12 fois dans le truc, sinon ça te kick. Quand tu joues à plusieurs, si un de tes potes te raise, ça compte pas dans les revives.
First up, Nightmare Dungeons, very exciting system. Players haven't had a chance to play these in our betas yet, but as they get into the
12 c'est énorme hein, quand même. Mourir 12 fois dans le donjon, c'est chaud. Hein.
You'll begin to see, you'll gain access to some of your first sigils, which are primarily initially earned by completing Whispers of the Dead, one of our other overworld content features that players will be able to engage with. Now, sigils are really interesting in that they are tied to a level when you find them, which is going to affect the level of the monsters inside that space. They have various afflictions, which we've talked a little bit about in the stream.
Ah, ça c'est le fameux truc qui te suit.
These are going to modify the way that level rolls out. But Nightmare Sigils, when they are activated, after you collect one, is going to basically open up a portal near an existing side dungeon. And in the pre-release version of Diablo 4 and additional seasons, we basically select a subset of all of the side dungeons in the game that can become Nightmare Dungeons for that period. So players become more familiar with a set number of these because they know that they can be populated with these Nightmare Dungeon experiences. So you might already know, whether it's Annex Acclaim or whatever it is, what the layout of a given dungeon might look like normally. But Nightmare Sigil is going to change that by introducing these new afflictions and then also these greater afflictions. We showed earlier in the video like this. Right now, actually, we're looking at this.
Donc là, on a des mécaniques, il y a des mécaniques qui ont complètement changé le truc, hein, qui n'ont rien à voir avec le donjon de base.
It might not be native to that dungeon, which is pretty cool in that we like the idea that players are going to have to kind of deal with these new different threats than what they're typically used to as part of that encounter. And there's a number of these other like greater afflictions, like we showed the Stormbane's Wrath, that disc thing that was flowing around around you, and occasionally it just pulses out this really big, stunning, damaging effect. So you have to be mindful of where it is. You should make sure you avoid it as part of the combat experience. Definitely adds a new wrinkle to gameplay as you're going through.
Okay, donc il parlait des manus et des bonus. Ça va être, il y en a qui vont être violents apparemment.
Deeper into the Nightmare Sigil system, unlocking higher level sigils and dealing with more and more dangerous threats over the course of time. And this is a really great place, not only just to earn experience and really push your build and make sure that you're strong enough to tackle these sorts of challenges. But you'll also
améliorer des
glyphes. It's a really great place to farm for sacred and ancestral items in particular. And these are the places that you're going to be upgrading your Paragon glyphs, We'll be talking more about the Paragon system right now. So, and that like this is an opportunity to show the actual upgrade glyph screen. I just noticed like, hey, look, it's actually up right now. What timing? So yeah, when the player reaches the end of a nightmare dungeon, they get to basically go ahead and take one of the glyphs they've been collecting over the course of their 50+ experience, and basically slot it into here and choose to upgrade it and make that glyph even more powerful. These sockables will go into your Paragon board and end up being some of the single most powerful modifiers you can apply to your character. Above legendary powers.
Ok, donc il dit que les glyphes, ça va être un truc de dingue. Hein.
So it's really in your benefit, based on your build, to be choosing, looking for a set number of these and upgrade them to exactly what
on augmente le radius au level 15. C'est-à-dire, plus ta glyphe, tu la fais pex, plus t'as une range qui est grosse.
What I noticed is that if you get some afflictions that you don't particularly care about, we have the ability to salvage some in order to craft sigils of our own, right? I think it's a 4-to-1 ratio, is that right?
Yeah, just about. So you'll be able to get a lot of these different sigils by going to their dungeons.
Ah ouais, les revives, ils diminuent, j'ai pas vu.
Content. If you're finding sigils that you don't really want or don't really want to run, because maybe we're gonna have like enemies inside are gonna do additional lightning damage, but you don't have a lot of lightning resist on your build. Maybe you want to go ahead and like salvage that back at the occultist, take that down to its sigil dust, and use that to basically make new random sigils for you to go ahead and run with. This is ways for players to kind of like, push themselves a little further. They'll unlock higher level sigils they can craft through the system over the course of time. And it's another way to kind of like reutilize some of the sigils you might not be as interested in running from time to time.
Yeah, one thing I liked about the afflictions was it was making me make choices during the gameplay. Like two that I can speak to.
On reviendra en détail là sur les screens qu'on a vu après le live.
I'm in the middle of fighting an elite and I'm almost taking it down. I see that nightmare portal opening and I'm like, okay, should I take care of that before it starts spawning more monsters, or do I finish this fight first? I'm forced to make a decision, and I got to live with the consequences. If I think, maybe I should take him down, and then the fight becomes more challenging, and nope, I should have taken care of that gate first. Another one is, I forget the name, but it's some kind of blood cyst that starts to grow, and then if you just don't touch it, it eventually explodes in a huge area.
Yeah.
And it's either, okay, destroy it before it does that, or get the heck away as fast as possible.
Ok, Again, donc il parlait de mécaniques
qui
sont un peu inconnues. Il parle de son expérience, il ne savait pas quoi faire quand il a testé, quand il a vu les premières mécaniques. Donc, commencez par hardcore, les gars, ça va être trop chaud. Surtout si vous n'êtes pas habitué des mécaniques. Ça va être une dinguerie de commencer. Racker, il disait qu'il s'est fait surprendre par deux mécaniques, vous ne savez pas ce qu'il fallait faire exactement. Donc, c'est des mécaniques à apprendre.
Got a chance to play through some of those. So yeah, Nightmare Dungeon is very exciting, and they'll go up beyond level 100 as well. Actually, this is a content type that you can actually fight up to creatures up to level 150. Actually, as part of the experience, based on how far you're able to push yourself as time goes on. So really excited about how far players can go with that.
All right, now you're talking about glyphs and the Paragon system, so let's talk more about those Paragon boards.
Ok, ça va parler du Paragon system et des glyphes.
Paragon boards. So we've talked a bit about Paragon in the past. We've shown picture the board just like this, and we've shown you things like, hey, look, like here's normal node. And this is a way that you're going to earn like 5 willpower. But that's not all this board is about. There's a lot of other complexity and things to deal with in here. So there are basically 4 types of nodes to kind of like quickly reprise some of this information. The first, of course, is normal nodes. Then we have what you show here is magic nodes. These are different affixes that you can collect.
Ok, il va parler de tous les styles de nodes, les blancs, les bleus, les magiques. Donc les blancs, c'est plus 5 caractéristiques. Les bleus, ça donne des petites stats supplémentaires. Et les jaunes, et rares, ça a des dingueries.
You can now boost that by finding this particular magic node, which kind of might eventually unlock other builds for you to kind of go and chase after. But then there are rare nodes, which is on the next slide. And here, okay, so there's some information here. Rare nodes have a pretty powerful effect right off the bat. But then on top of that, there's this bonus effect down below you can sort of see. Where on this one, it is, another 60% damage to elites. If you reach a certain amount of dexterity for your character. So the point here is that like rare nodes on their own, of which there's about 10 or more per board. Rare nodes are already pretty powerful generically. But then on top of that, if you were able to hit these thresholds stat requirements for these rare nodes, that is going to make them very, very potent for you indeed. And when you're looking at the board, these are some of the most critical things you'd be thinking about when you're plotting your path through each board, which of course, there are a number of boards available for you at launch. And then when you're able to rotate them, you'll have to choose how you want to progress through rare nodes, whether you want to engage with the legendary nodes or not. This is a really important thing.
Yeah.
One other bit about this, just because it's easy for me to forget about, is that when you're going from Paragon board to Paragon board, like in the first board, this might be the cost. But then when you're looking at the second board that you're progressing through, those requirements are actually going to go up. So it's not in your interest to go like run from board to board, just unlock as many of these as you can directly through that way. You need to spend a little bit of time into the board and pick the ones that you really want, because the next board that you unlock to get more rare nodes of different types,
que le chemin que tu vas prendre est très important parce qu'il va te permettre de débloquer les bonus. Par exemple, là, on voit un bonus qu'on a besoin de 260 de dex. Donc, se déplacer sur le tableau Paragon et aller chercher de la dex, c'est pas nul. Si vous voulez débloquer un maximum de puissance.
And then I look at the requirements for those bonuses, and then I start looking at the normal nodes on the. I'm like, oh, okay, well, I'm pretty close to the dexterity.
Donc les nodes blanches plus 5 ont de l'importance parce qu'ils vont permettre de débloquer la puissance sur les jaunes.
And how much do I care about that particular?
Là, on parle d'un plus 16% de dommages finalement.
And I'm thinking about that. So the normal nodes actually become sort of a path that you're trying to take to turn on these bonuses.
Absolutely, and that's not all. There's one more node type as well, and then we're going to get back to normal nodes in just a second. So then we have our legendary nodes. So every one of the boards for each of the classes has a legendary node somewhere on it. And these are really, really powerful powers like you'd expect. They are a legendary power effectively unique to the Paragon board system.
Donc les nodes légendaires avec une ligne bien spécifique sur chaque tableau.
So these are really, really powerful things to go and collect, but they're actually not the most powerful thing. This is just an additional
Non, c'est 16 plus 16. Le 32, c'est parce qu'il avait déjà le bonus. C'est 16 de base et plus 16 si tu as la dex. Donc là, on parle des glyphes.
And the sockets are going to be sitting adjacent to a number of other regular nodes. Now, the way that glyphs work is that you're going to put them into one of these sockets, and they are going to be affecting nearby nodes and also fueled by other nearby nodes. So if you hit certain thresholds inside some of the glyphs, you're also going to unlock powerful bonuses. They're going to also affect nearby nodes at the same time. And as I mentioned before, glyphs can be leveled up pretty high. They continue to grow the radius of the affected nodes as you level up through certain tiers.
Tu peux augmenter la puissance des rares avec les glyphes. Les glyphes, c'est une tuerie.
Because the player can rotate their board and choose which gate they actually want to enter from. You have to like kind of choose from board to board where are the sockets on this board? Are they near the stats I really want for this glyph? Because this glyph is going to be fueled by dexterity nodes within range of the glyph effect.
La range, et en plus, tu as des glyphes qui augmentent même les pouvoirs des nodes rares. Non, mais attends, là, je m'attendais pas à ça sur les glyphes. Hein. Les glyphes, c'est ultra fort. Donc savoir où mettre la glyphe, quel glyphe tu mets où, ça va avoir de l'impact très 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 lourd sur les dommages, surtout en fait.
Burn type sorceresses to feel like they've got very different paths to the Paragon board, different decisions to make, even if all their skill choices are identical.
Yeah, it's something
c'est bon.
We've talked about a lot with Diablo 4. It's the idea.
Je pense qu'ils ont fait un très très bon truc sur le Paragon, quoi.
Let's say Incinerate is a powerful sorcerer build for and you want
je sais pas combien de glyphes différentes à voir. Mais là sur la glyphe que j'ai vue là, elle était dingue. Elle était dingue.
Every Paragon board is almost like a Paragon class, like a specialization class where
les glyphes ont l'air bien plus puissantes que certains pouvoirs légendaires. Ouais, les glyphes, faut les pex par contre. Faut les pex pour que c'est une range de ouf.
And it extends to the blues. So like on a necromancer, like, oh, this board is like the pure summoner fantasy, and this one is
merci Madrier, merci Araglide, merci super Sébinou,
merge
Arius,
together,
Okawa,
like Bone and
Bladzer, merci pour les follow les gars.
Further, explore and dive into that specialization.
Yeah. There's 220 Paragon points that players will be able to have by the time they finish leveling up their character at level 100. We want those choices to feel like they've got meaning individually. Players can respect the number of those choices if they want, both cost. We want to be able to play with this system and be able to like kind of experiment with different ideas as they go. But importantly, we want them to feel like that the choices they made for the 220 matter a great deal to their overall performance. Yeah.
Ok. Bon, ils veulent que 220 points à poser, ils veulent que ce soit impactant. À mon avis, avec les glyphes, ça va l'être.
I guess at this point we can talk about some of the beta learnings. We had a beta. The community gave a lot of feedback.
Donc ils vont parler des feedbacks de la bêta, ce qu'ils ont changé sur le jeu. Merci Sonico, merci Shaline Shade.
We're going to talk about that. Now is the time. So let's start out with looking at some of the class changes that we did.
Donc ils vont parler d'équilibrage des classes.
So there's a lot of text on this screen. You've had an opportunity, if you've been following along, to check out our blog that documents a lot of the
et les frises peut-être. Ouais, mais ça c'est ce qu'il y avait dans le patch. Ok, donc là ils reprennent les informations qu'ils avaient mis sur la communication. Rien de nouveau là. Penses-tu qu'il y aura une bêta test, ça serait cool pour tester de nouveau. Franchement, j'aimerais trop quoi. Une bêta avec le paragon et les glyphes. Mais laisse tomber, je serais comme un ouf. Ouais, explosion morbide nerfée. L'explosion morbide, c'est un peu overcheat. C'est pas ça qu'ils auraient dû nerfer, c'est l'aspect légendaire qui fait exploser, qui rend immune pendant quasiment tout le temps. Allez, lâchez la big news. Ah là, ils font traîner, bah, c'est normal.
The melee classes felt weaker than the necromancer, rogue, and sorcerer. And there are a lot of aspects to that. So there's some nuance in here, right? Like for the barbarian, we felt, we identified that
il va reprendre tous les trucs un par un.
At low levels in particular,
les deux mains. Arachno qui s'emballe.
Sort of built in.
Imagine, à la fin du live, il dit en fait, c'est en live là, vous jouez maintenant. Imagine. Non, je vais mettre à jour mon client. On sait jamais.
Some of the ways the barbarian has to get up close and personal with their sort of weapon heavy spec.
La news, c'est je sors plus tôt. Non, impossible. Ils ne toucheront pas la date. Ils peuvent pas toucher la date de sortie du jeu.
Benefit from some buffs. In fact, I think Riker, you got to play the druid a little bit.
I did, yeah. So honestly, when I first saw the patch notes, I was like, oh, I was hoping the druid had gotten a bit more love with regards to spirit generation. But then I played an endgame build of, it was a perma werewolf storm druid. So I'm a werewolf who's casting storm skills, and the playstyle was so tight, it flowed so well. It just all gelled together once you got the full kit, the full build together. And I went into this week with a certain class favoritism. Where I had rogue, I had necromancer, sorceress, barbarian, and then druid in dead last. I'm completely confused now. I think druid might be my favorite now.
Yeah, it's, another thing that we did, if we take a look at the classes again, another thing that we did in terms of the melee classes is we took a look at bosses and monsters, in particular their attacks that deal damage in an area where it feels like there wasn't a way for the melee
le druide c'est fort, c'est juste qu'on n'avait pas toute la vision. Le druide accablement, ça va être ours accablement, ça va être très fort. C'est juste qu'au départ, comme t'as pas tous les skills, tu mets plus longtemps, c'est plus lourd. Comme le barbe. Sur les, si tu choisis pas tout de suite la bonne spé, c'est très compliqué.
Projectiles originating in many cases from the monster and then traveling, so you have less time to react.
Bon, tout ça, on est déjà au courant, on a déjà vu. Je sais pas pourquoi ils reviennent dessus. Ça a déjà été communiqué.
And bosses that
le druide c'est trop stylé quoi.
Were much more deadly to melee classes, and we adjusted some of those abilities. Now, this also affects the necromancer class. Because you might notice that we had a note
ils font tirer là, ils reprennent la vieille news. On n'a pas besoin de ça.
We want the corpses to have sort of an economy. We want to have the sense that corpses are useful. You're using them to bring in more skeletons. And the necromancer pets, as a theme of this sort of bone class, they are a little bit more disposable, right? Like if a skeleton dies, you just pop out another one from a nearby corpse. So we want them to be
en train de justifier pourquoi ils veulent nerfer l'explosion morbide. On s'en fout, on joue pas ça. C'est fait, t'as pris ta décision, tant pis, on fera avec.
we want them to be kind of coming back from time
On
to
va parler
time.
de ouais, c'est pas grave pour l'instant.
We increase the damage that they take a bit, but we also
Il n'y a rien à voir de spécial
areas
là-dessus.
where bosses were doing too much damage to melee. We also took a look at cases where there were abilities that felt unfair for pets, where there was just like a huge damage in a huge area, and maybe it's no problem for a player to get out of it, but trying to micromanage your pets to get out of this.
Micromanage an army of skeletons around. Yes.
That's not a fun gameplay that we're trying to capture specifically with the Necromancer class. So we modified the damage that those kinds of powers do to pets, both Necromancer and Druid pets, in fact.
Yeah, we do want to make sure that managing your minions to some degree is part of the mastery of playing a Necromancer, and that like
on passait plus de temps sur une communication qu'ils ont déjà faite il y a une semaine que sur les infos là.
We feel that is definitely part of the fantasy of the Necromancer class is needing to resummon, to your point, these kind of disposable soldiers that are supposed to be helping you. So we want to make sure that continues to hold true, but not to a point where like an army necro can't go fight bosses. That's obviously not what we're trying to build with any of these changes, of course. We just want to make sure that the Necromancer doesn't get a chance to engage with those parts
je pense pas.
Now another.
Merci Baptiste pour le Prime. Merci beaucoup, j'apprécie.
I was summoning my minions
Merci
regularly,
Knight.
so it was
Merci Zog.
something that was
Merci
a continuous part of the
Baptiste pour le
gameplay.
follow.
But I never
Merci
found
Adam.
myself in a position where, I'm out of
Merci à tous
minions,
pour
I'm
le
out of
follow et les
corpses.
primes. Ça fait
So the
plaisir les
corpse
gars.
generation rate it felt good. I'll admit that passive minions is not my favorite playstyle. I would love the ability to direct them, but for what you intended to accomplish, I felt you did.
Yeah, so one of the other areas of feedback, we have a note here that says
Merci
that
Sputnik
might be a
pour
little
le
bit
Prime.
confusing. It says we reviewed the class skills.
Merci frérot, ça fait plaisir.
There were good options to get out of
Train de la hype. Ça fait longtemps qu'on n'a pas vu Train de la hype.
Unstoppable, which is the effect in Diablo 4 that
Merci
clears
à Raglid.
control impairing effects, crowd control
Le
effects,
train de la hype.
and makes you immune to them for the duration of that effect. So the classes are designed so that every class has, is intended to have access to a good set of options to clear crowd control, so that there is an interaction here between, monsters are doing crowd control, I have options to remove it, but I need to think about those options. And we saw feedback during beta that at early levels, some classes felt like they didn't have enough options there. Riker, in your play at the higher levels, did you feel like that was still an issue?
Ils font durer sur ce patch
I don't remember
note.
it being an issue at the high levels of play, no. Going back to my favorites, Barbarian now is my second favorite after being my fourth. Again, yeah, the melee play style.
Il disait à Riker qu'il a joué Druid, c'est maintenant devenu son préféré à haut niveau. Et Barbare son second préféré.
I didn't feel constantly crowd controlled or an inability to gap
Donc
close.
Druid, ça va envoyer.
The spears.
Vous faites pas avoir par la bêta, ça va envoyer Druid.
The lunging attack to close the gaps, and a good toolkit to deal with everything.
Merci Slaylo.
The last thing I want to note on classes, of course, is that there are a few other changes beyond what you're seeing here. I think
Il revient sur son vieux patch. On sait,
Hydra changes.
Storm Werewolf.
We made a lot of small changes to classes. There are also some cases like legendary powers. We updated legendary power effectiveness, which is sort of vague.
Le druide, ça va.
It's really just that there are a bunch of small details, and we're sort of tweaking them. The other thing I want to talk about is dungeons.
Right? Les donjons. On repart sur les donjons.
So we got a lot of feedback from players that there was a lot of.
Il va parler des feedbacks des joueurs. Il va parler du backtracking, du fameux.
There are really two ways that we wanted to tackle
le fameux buff qu'on va avoir maintenant quand on va ramasser un objet dans le donjon.
If we have a situation where you're running back, we have a system that causes monsters to ambush you to make sure that it's not just running through an empty space.
Non, en fait, avec la mécanique d'accablement, le fait de tanker, d'avoir beaucoup de vie et beaucoup de sportifs, ça te fait faire des accablements de dingue. Et ils auront 3 accablements possibles.
Look at this. Graphic design is our passion.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Donc là, il parle du farm des mecs sur la bêta. Voilà ce qu'on faisait. On fait le petit cercle, on s'arrête, on relance le donjon.
But I did not make it. But I think this is a great example. So this is one of the dungeons that players called out in beta, Hoarfrost Demise, right, as one that had a lot of run back. And one of the reasons that you can see here that it has so much run back is that the objectives are laid out in a way that you have to run down a long, narrow hallway, to get to one, and then you have to run back. It's a dead end, and then you have to run back down that narrow hallway. So we changed the layout of like this.
Right.
So you can see that the objectives,
les points des objectifs, ils les ont mis sur la route au lieu de les mettre sur le côté où tu es obligé d'y aller et revenir. Donc maintenant, tu continues, tu fais le chemin pareil, sauf qu'ils ont mis les points sur la route.
The player has explored all of the dungeon and you can see all of the map.
Yeah.
But when you're playing through the dungeon, you don't have the map is fogged. You haven't explored it yet. But it's set up in such a way that as you're exploring through the dungeon, you're going to naturally encounter those objectives along your way, and so you're not going down.
Ils ont mis les objectifs pas cachés à aller chercher à droite à gauche.
This is going to lead to smiles.
Yeah.
This is good. But no, it's important. Like we want to make sure that as you progress in the space, you are naturally going to cross these objectives in a simpler way, as opposed to you need to like kind of like wander and kind of like backtrack a lot more.
Oh my God! Yeah, and in fact, we identified a number of dungeons that got this feedback.
C'est ce qu'on veut pas faire, ils disent.
And we also, we were talking about nightmare dungeons.
Le but, ce serait de faire
we
ça.
also want to make sure that nightmare dungeons.
Les points qui sont, il faut aller les chercher pour revenir. Ça, ils vont éviter ça maintenant.
Replayability system, as we were just talking about earlier. This is another example of Quadragon Barracks. It's another dungeon that we saw a lot of feedback and screenshots from beta.
C'est plutôt une bonne amélioration, je trouve.
See that the
une fois que tu vas là, que tu reviennes en marchant, tu perds du temps, il n'y a pas de kiff, il n'y a pas de monstres, vu que tu les as déjà tués à la ligne, ils reviennent pas sur le chemin.
And you can end up getting confused and running back. Because the other thing that happens here is that if
c'est plutôt des bonnes améliorations sur les donjons.
Run to an objective and the next thing that you have is back along a path that you know about already. Then why wouldn't you just run back along that path that's empty of monsters? It's not fun. It's more fun to kill monsters, but it's more efficient than exploring some unknown that might or might not lead back to it, right? So that's a key part of these layout changes as well. And if you take a look at the next shot here, you can see how we rearrange the objectives in Quadragon to ameliorate this.
Yeah. Now, these aren't the only changes that we made either. There's some other things we did to actually just straight up regular objectives. So there's things like, there are some dungeons where the players are asked to kill all the monsters inside a dungeon space. And in those situations, we've made it so like once the players reach a certain threshold of monsters they've killed, rather than saying like, there are potentially as many as 50 zombies in this cave. After the player has killed, 49 zombies, they might still be normally looking around in the last corner where a zombie got is kind of like hiding in a closet someplace.
Donc là, il parle des fameux monstres qui se cachent quand t'as une quête qui dit ouais, faut tuer tous les monstres. Il y a des monstres qui se cachent. Ils ont fait une mécanique comme quoi ils vont revenir vers toi automatiquement.
Every inch of unexplored area in that dungeon just to find the zombies. Some of them are going to come after you in those situations.
Ça aussi,
which is a great
ils ont déjà
change to make it a
communiqué
little bit easier to engage with those things. And then there's another one, like we have features or dungeon objectives where the player is asked to go and collect like anima, which are just these objects, they're like these motes of energy that drop on the ground when you kill certain kinds of monsters. Sometimes you need to go and gather a whole bunch of these things and then bring them back to another area to deposit them. Sometimes it opens the door, might summon a boss, all kinds of things that we do with this. But in these situations,
ils font traîner, ils vont lâcher la dinguerie à la fin.
Il
parle pas trop, Fletcher il parle pas trop.
You're going to also gain.
Il va balancer son truc.
By picking these up, you're going to gain some resource back for your class. You can get some other things.
C'est la surprise. Les bougies vont être parfumées.
Health potion. So there's lots of things we're trying to do to make sure that those experiences help speed you up and feel great to engage with while you're also going through a lot of the layout changes that Joe just talked about.
Ils vont pas tout dévoiler maintenant. Si, ils vont lâcher une dinguerie là. Pas tout, mais ils vont lâcher une dinguerie.
Kill all monsters. Because players rightly identified a couple of key problems.
Pourquoi sera ton main?
With kill all monsters.
Mon main, ça va être forcément le barbe.
If you're having to go and hunt down one of those
full barbe ici.
That's effectively backtracking, right? You're running through an empty space. And the other aspect of it is that the sort of the intensity curve of the excitement in the dungeon is going down. Like you're backtracking through a bunch of empty space, and then when you get there, it's not going to be an exciting moment. There's going to be four monsters hiding in the corner, and you're going to kill them, and it's going to feel sort of like, well, I guess that was a requirement that I had to turn
one
off.
Spider,
right?
Yeah, it's almost similar to like Den of Evil, Diablo 2 feel and so forth, but now them being able to seek you out and means less backtracking, less hunting in corners for that one fallen or wherever.
Well, yeah, and the other thing I like about it is that it increases the intensity at the end of the dungeon, right? Because you have the monsters, you're still clearing the last monsters, and now you have monsters running at you. What was your experience with these changes?
Yeah, so this was probably my #1 complaint about the beta was the backtracking. I'd often, in a dungeon at some point, reach a point where I'm like,
pour moi, c'est un peu problème, ça me dérange pas de revenir en arrière. Donc, je l'ai fait dans Diablo 1, dans Diablo 2, dans Diablo 3. Je m'attendais à le faire dans Diablo 4. S'ils optimisent les trucs, pourquoi pas. S'ils optimisent pas, je m'en bats les couilles. Ça va pas me gêner plus que ça. Je pense qu'il y a eu beaucoup de moins sur Internet pour pas grand chose.
Suck it up, backtracking has always been part of Diablo, it's part of the game. But like the changes made hasn't made the experience linear. It's not like, oh, now we just have 1 quarter to go down. As you were saying, like now if you do go on a side path, there could be things to run into, but just overall, everything from an experience standpoint just flows a lot better.
I know with beta learnings and everything that we took in from the community and we posted on the blog, we actually had a big question in regards to dungeons and resetting dungeons and how that actually works. And I do want to take some time for you guys to be able to clarify a little bit, because there's tons of questions, and then we tried to clarify, and I think we made it worse. So we're gonna
re-clarify the clarification.
Exactly.
Yes. So the reset dungeon button, right? So we added this button.
Le fameux reset du donjon. Ils vont parler du bouton reset.
An easy way for dungeons to reset naturally. In fact, the way we added it led to some undesirable secondary effects because it was instant. It didn't care if you were inside the dungeon. It doesn't care if the dungeon is partially completed. If you're a hardcore character and you're in danger, you can just press it and presto, you're
okay. Petit dit qu'il y a des effets non désirés.
Since we initially added this button, the amount of time for dungeons to reset organically, we've been working with our online team, and we've been making changes to, over the course of development, like how Town Portal works, how dungeon reset work. And so the way that it works today, if you are outside the dungeon, and if everyone from your party is outside the dungeon, so if you're alone, just you, and there are no town portals open in the dungeon, then the dungeon will naturally reset over a period of about 60 seconds, about 30 seconds of matchmaking and 60
secondes pour un reset naturel du donjon.
Or if it's partially completed, like maybe you got halfway through and you're like, you know what, I have to do something else.
Quand tu l'as complété, tu ressors, t'as 60 secondes, il est reset.
I want to do something else now.
Naturellement.
Then it'll take a little bit longer to reset. It takes about 150 seconds, but it'll still reset naturally pretty quickly.
Ok. Si tout le monde sort.
The other case here is that you've got maybe you're doing the dungeon and there's some particular objective in the dungeon or side quest in the dungeon, and one of your friends joins and they want to do that side quest too.
Merci, frérot.
Right? But maybe you've already completed it in this dungeon, so you can also hop out of the dungeon, which you can use through the Leave Dungeon button right in the UI as well. It does have a short cast time, so
not as quick, yeah.
But it's right through the UI. You can do it from anywhere. Invite the other person to the party, to your friend to the party, make them leader, hop in, you'll get a fresh dungeon as well.
Yeah, so hopefully that clarifies. You can still reset.
Ok, donc en fait, il y a des resets.
Il y a
des resets, mais plus naturels. Ce qu'ils ont voulu éviter, c'est que les gens puissent le reset au milieu comme ça pour rien. Et surtout pour les joueurs hardcore, s'ils sont dans la merde, ils ont juste à cliquer dessus, ça les fait sortir directement. Donc ça aussi, c'était un effet non désirable. Ils ont voulu corriger, donc c'est pour ça qu'ils ont enlevé le bouton reset. Mais les donjons seront toujours resetables d'une manière naturelle.
Ultra wide screens and being able to control cast distance and so forth, and with specific abilities and whatnot. So, people who are using ultra wide or mega ultra wide screens wouldn't be able to essentially cast to the furthest corner of their screen and be able to use abilities in that type of way. And then one other thing that we did notice during beta which was world boss encounters and how players would actually complete a world boss encounter and then go back to town and then find another way of being able to, in that same window, go through another world boss encounter to obtain multiple opportunities of grabbing loot, which is something that we also did address through the beta learnings that we received from players. So
that's true. Now, I'll point out that the first time you kill a world boss in a week, you are going to get more loot than you'll get on subsequent times. So
une fois par semaine, tu vas avoir des loots supplémentaires sur les world boss.
There's less incentive to try to like find a way to like kill the same world boss 10 times, but you certainly will get some rewards from
it. Exactly. Right. Yeah, so it's not the exact rewards or a clone of the rewards that you got from the first kill themselves. Great. I know we ended up learning a ton from the community.
Ils n'ont pas dit s'ils avaient changé vraiment quelque chose là-dessus sur le fait de multiplier les world boss.
The endgame systems within Diablo 4. We do have a cool. What's this?
Il va lâcher l'info.
Is it time for a surprise? It is time for a surprise.
Wait, what?
If you've been hiding on the internet and have not seen Rod Ferguson make very, very
il parle des tweets que je vous ai balancés sur la vidéo d'aujourd'hui.
This is the and more.
This is the and more of the actual broadcast, I would say. So happy to announce that we've been hearing a lot of feedback from players about wanting to experience more Diablo 4 and check it out before the game's release in June. And so on May 12th through May 14th, we are going to be hosting a server slam event where all players within Diablo 4 or who want to play Diablo 4 can jump in and actually check out the game again. This is a really important weekend for the team and the dev team here because we need as many people to really log in, check out Diablo 4 and play through the game because we need to test out our servers some more before we actually launch. Joe, I know you have a lot of want and need and emphasis towards this specific weekend, so I'd be curious to hear.
Yeah, so first off, you know, all of the changes that we just talked about in this live stream will be in place on the server.
Tous les changements qu'ils ont communiqués, ils vont être en jeu. Donc, vous pouvez tester si les nécros, si les pets, etc.
That we made from beta, you will be able to
on va jouer à la version qui va sortir le 6 juin.
The other thing I want to point out is that we recently announced that we've gone gold. That Diablo 4 has gone gold.
Okay.
And that means that we got all of those changes from the betas in. We did tons of server. We learned a ton of stuff in terms of our servers, in terms of server configuration, making sure that we were fixing bugs. We deployed hotfixes during those 2 weekends, and so we were able to really improve our confidence for launch through that, and that's why
le but c'est qu'il soit vraiment solide sur le jour de la release.
Now the purpose of this weekend is to slam those servers, right? Really make sure that everything is exactly perfect for launch because that's really what's important to us, right? We want players to have a good experience
Ils ont pas parlé.
on day one when the game launches, and so come slam our servers now.
Je pense que ça va être ouvert à tous. Le but, c'est de ruiner le serveur. C'est de détruire le serveur.
Diablo 4 community to come help us slam our servers, but
that's not the only reason to do it. When you participate in the Diablo 4 server slam, you're going to have another chance to earn the rewards from the first two beta weekends. So if you
c'est la dernière chance pour gagner en fait les bonus quand tu passes level 20 pour avoir le loup, les titres, etc.
You have another chance to get your Beta Wolf pack cosmetic and the 2 titles.
Oh my God!
And in addition to that,
merci Caju Zero, merci pour le Prime.
We've set the level cap to level 20. We've adjusted the legendary drop rates to be consistent with what you'll see on live.
Le drop rate qu'on va avoir pendant ce week-end, ce sera le drop rate qu'on va avoir en juin. Donc il n'y aura pas des légendaires à foison.
And on top of that, you're going to have 48 hours to slam these servers, right? Now, during this time, a Shava is going to spawn starting about 24 hours after the servers go up. and then every 3 hours after that. So you can have, I think it's 9.
Donc Ashava va pop toutes les 3 heures. D'abord, il va y avoir...
If you get to level 20 and you kill Ashava while you are level 20, so max level in this test, in this period of time.
What level is it though?
20.
It's 20. So you got to be level 20?
Alors, level 20 max.
Don't show up in the Shava at level 5 and think you're going to get this.
Yeah, expect you'll get the reward.
But what you're going to get is this Cry of Ashava mount trophy, which is exclusive to this Server Slam weekend. You can see it here on your screens.
Yeah, the trophy there and that horse's hip on the saddle there. Very nice. Oh wow.
Ça, c'est la monture qu'on peut gagner en tuant Ashava.
We basically cut a horn, part of Ashava's horn off, and you know.
Avec la corne d'Ashava sur le côté.
And some
Stylé.
nice metal work there. And of course, mount trophies in Diablo are cosmetic customizations that you can add to your mount along with mount armor.
Ah, c'est juste la corne.
Trophy that you can mount. It mounts some trophies.
C'est des trophées qu'on peut mettre racler sur la monture. Ouais, ça sera juste la corne.
Or they can mount on the side, on the horse's flank, like you see here with this trophy.
Yeah, so again, like all rewards from the original first 2 weekends of the beta, including the 2 titles and the beta wolf pack will be available, as well as the Cry of Ashava mount trophy. And for the mount trophy, you have to be level 20 and kill Ashava. All classes will be available. And you'll be able to explore Fractured Peaks again from the 2 beta weekends that we had beforehand. And of course, Ashava will be spawning much more often in this Server Slam weekend for players to actually jump in and obtain the rewards and really help us out, help out the team, and make sure that we have a smooth launch for Diablo 4 come June.
Donc
so,
le Ashava va pop
huge news for all of this. And we will have a blog that will be going either live right now or live immediately after the broadcast for players to actually read about all this information, and that will be available on Diablo4.com. So make sure to check out the blog, get all your information there, and jump in on our Server
dans 2
Slam
semaines, hein, c'est beau gosse.
It's another opportunity to play Diablo 4 before the launch, which is really great. And you can test all the new beta changes, which is really cool. And one other thing that I do want to note for at least PC players who are jumping into the Server Slam weekend, the team here has done some massive work on some of the PC optimization from the first 2 beta weekends.
Ça tombe pendant la Z-Line.
DLSS 3 for NVIDIA cards will also be available for people to try out in the Server Slam weekends. Or Server Slam weekend.
On ne garde pas notre Nouvelle pour la bêta.
Sorry, there's only one. I don't want to
Apparemment, ça sera
expectations or anything. But there's more graphic options and optimizations and so forth for PC players to check out. So yeah, looking forward to everyone really hitting the servers and really helping out with the game. We do want to jump into Q&A because we always end with Q&A.
On poser des questions. Questions-réponses.
Riker actually has a bunch of questions that he was asking his own community that we will most definitely go through as well.
And then we're also going to be grabbing some
questions here from chat and so forth. One question that we have been seeing that has come up within the community beforehand, and we'll start off with this one, which is how long will it take us to get through the battle pass? It's a question that a lot of people in the community have been talking about over the last week and a half. I know that we wanted to talk about it a little bit more here.
Yeah, I think that there's. So I've talked a little bit about this in the past, but I think one thing I really want to emphasize is that when we think about the battle pass for the for Diablo 4 after the game ships, we're looking at our seasonal players. We want to make sure that the players who are going through the battle pass, they're going to have a lot of content to consume, outside the battle pass. They're in all likelihood to finish everything in the battle pass before they finish all of the content within a season to season. So there's a ton of things to look forward to. We want to make sure that the battle pass as a result is balanced in such a way that players of all types and all play styles are going to be able to get a chance to actually complete this this battle pass over the course of time. Our goal is if you want to start to engage with this, want to make sure that you are compelled to go through all of it as you're playing and just having a good time getting all of these rewards.
Yeah. All right. Cool. Riker, I know you have questions. I want to make sure that you get some questions in and so forth. And I guess we'll just go back and forth for this. It'll make it easier for these two guys.
You guys, we'll just be doing this.
Yeah, exactly. Just keep doing that.
Yeah, sounds great. Well, so first off, something that you were, I think, touching upon earlier, and correct me if I misunderstood, but I think on the topic of Nightmare Dungeons, it sounds like every season there's going to be a rotation of 30 dungeons that can be turned into the nightmare dungeons. Is that right?
So we want to make sure that we've got a subset of the dungeons we have in the overall
Alors, la
game.
question c'est, est-ce que pendant les saisons, il va y avoir des rotations sur les donjons du cauchemar?
We want to take a subset of those each season. Exact number we're working on. It's gonna be, we're going to think about that and think about it. But
ils sont pas encore fixés là-dessus.
Every season to make sure that we are highlighting different kinds of objectives, different sorts of layouts, different monster families, just different experiences. And
ils veulent mettre un thème sur la saison et voir un peu ce que ça va faire en modifiant les
dungeons every season, every time, with regard to this system in particular. So that is the idea. Is we do want to rotate through these from season to season while we're looking to introduce other ideas. Yeah.
Cool.
Okay, ils savent pas encore, ils sont pas encore fixés. Ils y réfléchissent.
Twitch names, guys. I do this every stream.
From a Twitch user.
From a Twitch user in chat. Do you have any plans to keep interest for people who don't plan to play in seasons?
So we are going to be making.
La question c'est, est-ce que vous avez prévu quelque chose pour les gens qui n'ont pas prévu de jouer à la saison?
Post-launch plans yet, but I will say this. That we're going to be having a lot of like really rich and interesting content updates for our
une autre bêta, il va y avoir le 12-13 mai.
Balance changes and adding new legendary items and like unique items and things of that nature for players who are playing in the Eternal Realm, the place where you will be able to never have to worry about like a character reset or do any of those things. There will always be new infusions of some game content at that level to players going in that space.
Cool.
But for the richest experience in the post-launch environment, I would highly recommend checking out Seasons because we're doing some really cool stuff.
All right. So one thing that I noticed in the December press beta to the public beta was that changes were made to the skill tree. There were like new passive skills, there were new paths made amongst the passive nodes. So I'm wondering, was the skill tree designed in such a way that you can, over the course of seasons or expansions, add new passive or active skills?
Yes. So the skill tree really that we have for Diablo 4 at launch really is just the beginning for these classes. We are going to be looking for new opportunities to create more playstyles within each of the classes. We'll be adding new passes, potentially new skills in the future. These are things
ils disent
we'd like
que
to do.
potentiellement les arbres de compétences ils vont changer au fur et à mesure des saisons et ils vont rajouter de nouveaux passifs.
More likely to happen as part of our our future larger like expansion size updates.
Notamment à chaque saison, il y a moyen que ça change.
We have lots of interesting customization options we're going to be adding as part of the seasons, but they might not touch the skill tree specifically.
Pour tout le monde, la bêta, ouais, ouverte à tous. Le but, c'est de défoncer le serveur. C'est de faire couler le serveur.
I think some confusion in regards to altars of Lilith, how those will work in between seasons, or will those reset?
Par contre, c'est level 20 max. C'est pas grave.
Sure. So Altars of Lilith are one of the features that players can go and collect basically in the overworld that we're going to contribute to their renown total within each of the zones.
Well, and give permanent character power as well.
I'm going to get there.
Okay.
So there's two purposes really that the Altars of Lilith have. They have this larger collectible feature where you want to kind of go get all of them for the stat points that you just called out, and then they also provide the renown. So renown is reset on a seasonal basis. So when you start a new character,
des points de renommée
renown score goes back down to 0. You'll have to go and finish side dungeons, side quests, go find Altars of Lilith,
Sauf
do these
les
things,
hôtels de
get that renown back up to unlock all of those benefits. Now you don't need to go do all of that content in the zone to max out your renown bar. There's actually way more activities
pour avoir le bonus maximum de la renommée, tu as besoin de faire 60% de la renommée totale. Tu n'as pas besoin de tout faire à fond.
When it comes to the stat gain, so basically, to your point that you were just speaking about, Altars of Lilith also have another purpose, in that when you find one, they give you a stat boost that's supposed to apply to your character and all characters in that realm.
À cheval level 20, ça va être
sport. The way that's going to work is that once you collect that stat boost from a specific Altar of Lilith, that stat effect is going to propagate out to other characters of that game type. So basically, hardcore is going to have its own progression for this, where it's like if you were playing a hardcore character at launch and you go and you do all these things, those stat boosts you collect will propagate to your hardcore characters you would make in the seasonal round.
Les hôtels de Lilith en softcore sont différents des hôtels de Lilith en hardcore. Donc c'est pas lié au compte, c'est plutôt lié voilà, il y a côté normal et côté hardcore.
Such that players don't need to go and collect every Altar of Lilith with every new season, but you do want to get some of them. They do still grant experience, and they do give you some bonus towards your boost towards your renown. But there's not the sense that you need to go and do every single one of them every single time. We want that to be a really fun experience for players to engage with it, particularly while they're exploring Sanctuary for their first.
On va pouvoir aussi tester.
And have that.
Ce qui est bien, c'est qu'on va pouvoir tester le reset naturel des donjons. Merci Estoc, merci frérot pour le prime.
Characters, if you unlock a permanent stat boost in season 1, that will persist into Season 2.
That's correct.
All right. With regards to item farming, we touched upon how Helltide, you can target farm specific slots. Is there any other kind of item types where either you can only get this item in this zone, this location, or is there some greater propensity for some items to drop off certain monsters, anything like that?
So we have a number of different
La question c'est est-ce qu'on a des endroits où on peut looter des loots spécifiques?
World bosses, for example, have a really good chance to drop Scattered Prism, which is the crafting material you need in order to add sockets to items in the game. And then there are certain content types that have the chance to grant certain materials, like Fiend Rose, for example, really only shows up in Helltide areas. And the only way to raise the level of your glyph is by going through nightmare dungeons. When it comes to item farming, we also, and I've talked a little bit about this in the past, but I think it's good to remind people and also just to continue talking about it, right? Because it's a new mechanic. And that is that when you're fighting creatures of a certain monster family, like zombies or skeletons for their respective families, those monsters have a higher chance to drop certain kinds of items.
Donc là, il dit par exemple, chaque famille de monstres, elle a une chance particulière de dropper des types d'items particuliers. Par exemple, les zombies, ils vont avoir des chances de dropper des pantalons.
They have a chance to drop crossbows, irrespective of your class. So you're playing a barbarian, which can't use crossbows, is one of its weapon types, and you could be killing all these skeletons, and you might just get a crossbow drop as a result of that. That's tradable with rogues. You know, there's other things you can do with that. But that's not taking a roll from the skeleton. It could drop everything else in addition to that crossbow. It's like an extra bonus thing that that skeletons can drop. Every monster family has a few different things they drop this way. So as players are going through the experience, and particularly while they're leveling up in the campaign, they'll occasionally start saying like, oh, I'm getting like a lot of like rings from this, or I'm getting a lot of boots from this, or I'm getting a lot, and they'll realize that over time, they'll realize over the course of time that these are being dropped based on the monster families they're engaging with. So as players discover more of this, they continue to fight more monsters and start mapping some of these things out, they will uncover the right areas or the best areas potentially to farm for certain kinds of things. And that includes like unique items as well.
Il valide vraiment ça. J'ai pas vu de tableau encore sur Internet à propos de ce sujet-là.
Try to fight a lot of skeletons because you know they have a chance to drop crossbows in addition to other things. So these are the sorts of things that, like, as you're diving deeper into like the hunting gameplay, the item hunting gameplay, these are things to look at. That's not the end. There's a lot more we're going to be doing as the game continues to mature and as we're going into like our post-launch period. But you know, we'll talk about that when the time's right.
Fair enough.
Donc là, il a juste confirmé le fait que certains types de monstres droppaient certains objets et qu'en fonction de ce que tu avais besoin, tu allais farmer tel ou tel endroit parce que tu avais besoin de tel ou tel objet, que ce soit des anneaux, des amulettes, etc.
I mean, we announced that the game has gone gold. The Server Slam is, you're testing a version of the game that is very close to the launch version of the game.
Ah, c'est pas la même, il a dit très proche.
So effective as a Server Slam. Now,
pas la même version qu'on aura, mais une version très proche sur le week-end du
12-14. Exactly like you saw during the beta, during the you know, after the game has launched, and making changes and making improvements based on data and player feedback.
Awesome.
All right, overlay map versus mini map. Mini map is a little map.
Overlay.
Overlay is what we had in the past in D2, where you have this semi-transparency of the large-scale map over your actual gameplay. D4 does not have an overlay map. A lot of people are asking for it. What's the reason for no overlay?
Ah, il demande pourquoi il n'y a pas d'overlay.
Yeah, so when you're playing through an action RPG and you're playing through that core loop, you're basically switching between two modes of behavior, right? You're killing monsters or you're navigating. And you're switching back and forth between those really quickly. And so it can be helpful to have that be as fast as possible so that you can I just killed those monsters. Okay, where am I going to go? Is there objective to the left or right? Right. And so the overlay map is very effective at doing that. In fact, it's so effective that it's up there's no reason to ever close it. And so there are a lot of solutions that we've seen different games do in terms of like trying to mitigate sort of its effects on combat in terms of fading areas around the player or other things like that. What we're trying to do is we're trying to keep the combat and navigation spaces as clean as possible by separating them a little bit more. And so that's why you see the mini map, you see the pin system on the map, you see in certain cases edge of screen indicators on the mini map. We want to add more of those kinds of things, but ultimately, you know, our goal is to make sure that players, when they're going back and forth between combat mode and navigation mode, that they have the tools that they need to do it efficiently, and they don't feel like it's a huge hassle. So we're going to be continuing to look at this feedback.
Sa justification n'est pas folle. Hein.
You know, you won't have an overlay map. We're trying to make that experience as smooth as possible. But we're going to continue to listen to player feedback on this point.
All right.
We have a question saying,
en gros, il a patogé pour dire que les joueurs étaient soit dans un mode je me déplace, soit dans un mode je tape. Ce qui n'est pas forcément vrai.
Brings like elevation or depth and so forth into those.
You know, it's interesting that one of the things that we did in Diablo 4 that's really cool is that you don't have to load between dungeon floors. An interesting effect of that is that you might not always notice when you're going down a floor into a lower floor. There is there are staircases and there are sort of moments where that shows up.
La question c'est sur le temps de chargement.
That appears.
Là, il dit que quand tu changes d'étage de donjon, il n'y a pas de temps de chargement. Mais c'était pas la question. La question c'était sur pour rentrer et sortir du donjon.
You know, when you think back to Diablo 1 and adventuring down through the cathedral, and it's this very deep dungeon. Our dungeon tech can certainly do that too, and that's certainly something that could be a cool option for the future.
Awesome.
All right. With regards to PvP, is there any kind of instancing to separate out solo players versus groups, or are we going to see like 4-man squads ganking lonely players?
Yeah, you will see 4-man squads ganking lonely players. I want to make sure I'm really clear about this. The fields of hatred that we have in Diablo 4 are not a place for honor. They're a place for slaughter.
C'est pas fait pour être équilibré et que les mecs vont se trimballer en groupe pour défoncer tout le monde. Donc y aller solo, c'est mourir.
That's what we're trying to do. Now, players who go into these spaces might also be fortunate and find that there's a number of other players that are trying to peacefully farm up in various resources while they're fighting there and not actually be interested in engaging in PvP immediately. Now, that also is a situation you might occasionally find yourself in. Maybe you decide that you want to take advantage of them, and you show up and decide that you want to go and gank those players and take their things. You know, greed gets the best of us all at some point in time. But I want to make it really clear that there are things in place in terms of how we bucket players by level and things like that to ensure that you're not always going up against like really, really high level players at a very, very low level. But in terms of like, I'm walking in this space, is there any guarantee that there aren't 3 people
essayer de mettre des joueurs qui ont à peu près le même niveau. Ça veut dire qu'il n'y aura pas tout le monde sur la même map. Il va y avoir des joueurs qui ont à peu près le même niveau sur la même map. Tu vas jamais te retrouver un level 90 contre un level 2.
Especially when you immediately walk into a field of hatred, if you were to immediately get killed by other players, there's actually no real penalty for you in that case. That you haven't started to acquire any of the PvP resources in that zone yet anyway. So they have nothing to gain from killing, and you have nothing to lose as a result of that death. So,
la seule chose à gagner, c'est les shards que les autres font. Si t'en as pas farmé, le mec, il n'aura rien à gagner à tuer.
Like level 100 players ganking level 25 players?
That's correct. There is some bucketing in place to make sure that doesn't occur.
I would add too that the fields of hatred are fairly large areas.
Yes.
So there are some tools to avoid the same group of players repeatedly killing you. There are also two fields of hatred, so you can move between fields of hatred. And there are things
il va y en avoir 2 différents à chaque fois.
That can allow you to be more evasive.
Et si tu te fais des gangs dans un, tu peux passer dans l'autre.
Where you feel like you're at a disadvantage. There are also, when you think about the fields of hatred mechanic, you're collecting these shards of hatred, and you're refining them so that you can turn them in for rewards. The locations that you can do that, there are several locations, typically active at a time.
Merci Bastien.
You can sort of do some strategizing about where there might be enemy players and where it might be safe.
That's right. When an altar is being used to purify those shards of hatred into red dust, you'll actually see a notification on your map letting you know where that's actually occurring. So if you see that there's a lot of activity in the northwestern part of the zone, maybe that's a great time to sneak over to the southeastern side and try to quietly and quickly cleanse some red dust on your own. Because once it's cleansed,
il va y avoir des annonces quand les mecs vont essayer de raffiner les shards.
Awesome.
Et donc tu peux en profiter pour aller farmer les mobs quand les mecs sont en train de se taper à un endroit.
I just want to note that we actually our next live stream in
May,
soon TM will be actually focusing a little bit on our seasonal structure as well as battle pass and so forth. So we're actually going to leave those comments specifically for that. I keep looking down at the monitor and the people in production behind me keep going, Adam, what's wrong with you? That's just me. In regards to other quick questions that we do have, I'm going to just lightning off a few questions that have been coming up. These are kind of related, I would say, but well, one is a co-op on PC. Have we looked at doing something like that? And then separately, mouse and keyboard on console. Is that something that we've also looked into?
No couch co-op on PC, no mouse and keyboard on console.
There you go. Mainly because, as you guys know, PC, like the account structure on Battle.net and having 2 accounts at the same time on one PC is a little difficult.
En fait, il posait la question s'il y avait possibilité de jouer à 2 sur le PC, c'est-à-dire un qui joue à la manette pendant que l'autre joue au clavier et souris. C'est pas possible.
I guess last question from me. With regards to the crafting system, can we expect that to be something that is built up to be more robust over time with regards to either seasons or, again, expansions?
Oh, yes. So Diablo 4 is a game about killing monsters, collecting loot, screwing around with that loot to do fun things and make it get more performance out of it, modifying those things, looking for the right affix. Yeah, we're going to absolutely continue to be like just changing some of the crafting options, modifying them, providing new options that don't exist right now, building upon things we already have in place. You can expect to see a lot of things. Like Diablo 4 is a live service because it's a rich bed of opportunities to continue to like refine, change, update, and modify the systems we have in place right now. So yeah, you'll definitely see more crafting features over the course of time.
Donc là, il parlait du craft. Est-ce qu'il va y avoir d'autres options pour le craft? Ils ont dit que oui, il allait en avoir, ça allait débarquer. Ils ont beaucoup d'idées, mais pas pour la sortie du jeu tout de suite, mais ça va arriver très prochainement après, avec des nouvelles options de craft dans tous les sens.
It's something that we had talked about earlier. Let's see. This is an interesting question. If you're on your mount, can you actually pick up crafting materials and stuff like that? While you're on your mount in the overworld?
There are a number of simple actions you can perform when you're on your mount. I believe right now you can pick up herbs when you're mounted. Yes.
Ok. Cool. La question c'est est-ce qu'on peut récupérer des objets pendant qu'on est sur la monture? Et la réponse est oui.
A lot of people are talking about
récupérer des plantes et des cailloux en étant sur la monture.
Incorporating that is something that we may look into post-launch or whatnot from our end. Cool. I think we got a decent amount of questions in. Talked about this, the beta learnings, and of course all the information about Endgame
and the Server Slam.
And the Server Slam.
Server Slam.
Yeah.
Yeah. On you mentioned WASD movement. So no, WASD movement will not be in the game at launch, but in the Server Slam, do check out the additional control customization options that we added. Yes. They are referenced on the blog, and we want to continue to add more ways to customize the control scheme in the way that you're thinking of. So something that we're thinking about for the future.
Exactly. So
Ils ont fait des
thank you guys
sur
again, and thank you, Riker, for joining us this week. I know you've had a opportunity to play through the game quite a lot. We've just stuck him in a room. He's really just played the game a ton this week. But we really appreciate everyone tuning in for the Diablo 4 developer update live stream. Again, our next live stream will be sometime in May, early May, and we'll be talking a little bit about our season structure as well as our battle pass.
En début de mai, il va y avoir un autre live stream pour parler des saisons.
In terms of Diablo 3, we have season 28.
Bien sûr, on suivra ça avec
it's an awesome
grand intérêt.
Season. Highly recommend checking it out.
Yeah, check it out.
If you haven't. And then of course with Diablo Immortal, they just came out with a big update about a week or two ago that added a new PvP system into the game. So make sure to check that out if you haven't as well. For Diablo 2, we do want to announce one quick thing as well, which is the Diablo 2 Season 4. Diablo 2 Season 4 will actually begin on May 4th. So we did want to get that out so people can plan their calendars, because it's always been a fun, exciting time within D2R for people to do the ladder race as they kind of get prepped for it, take time off, call off from work. We'll give you a doctor's note. It's perfect. So, but yes, thank you guys again for tuning in to the Diablo 4 developer update live stream. And we really appreciate you guys and appreciate the feedback. And thank you again, Riker.
Thank you so much for
joining us.
Yeah.
Any parting words from anyone?
On va revenir sur un petit peu sur ce qui a été dit.
We would like you to slam the server.
Yeah, do that.
Yes.
Yeah.
You must be level 20. And, we tested...
J'espère qu'ils ont mis la vidéo du replay sur YouTube.
to make sure that it was doable.
Yes.
We were pretty sure it was doable. But we did want to check to make sure it was doable. They were like, okay, go on.
It is quite challenging. If you are having a lot of trouble with it, you can always go down to difficulty level.
That's true. You could always go down to World Tier 1.
That's right.
Yes. And Woody Joe, we expect you to.
Donc là, ils ont dit Achava level 20.
For sure.
Si vous n'êtes pas sûr de le faire en difficulté 2, baissez le niveau, passez en difficulté 1. Parce qu'il y aura moins de loot, on sera moins haut level. Il y a moyen que ça soit tendu.
And yes, one other thing. We are going to be raiding into 2 Diablo partners, both from YouTube and on Twitch. So make sure to stay on the channel if you want to check them out. And yeah, thank you guys again. Really appreciate it. And thank you from everyone on the Diablo team. See you.
Yeah.
Ok. Bon, et alors on est content. On a de la bonne news. On a ce qu'il faut. Petit récap de ce qui va se passer. Achava niveau 20, ouais, ça va être sport, hein, Achava niveau 20. Je pense que sur la fin de la bêta, les mecs vont passer tous en niveau 1 pour la faire. Ouais, tu le fais une fois, tu te mets en easy, tu le tues avec la corne, et puis tu chopes la corne, et puis voilà, quoi. Ça va être ça, hein. Ok. Bon, j'espère qu'ils vont poser la vidéo ou le replay rapido, comme ça on peut la choper. Et on va revenir un peu sur ce qui s'est dit. Il y a des choses qui vont aller un peu vite, notamment sur les items. Les impressions des items, ils sont allés méga vite.